Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church. It's a great day today, and I'm really happy to be with you. I want to continue talking about encouraging words and good news from the Gospel of John. And this morning, I want to look at a little story in the 8th chapter. And you've probably heard of this chapter. It's about a woman who was caught in the act of adultery. And I won't read all the verses here, but I will read just sort of summarize it and recall that this was a story how the Jewish leaders had caught this woman in the act of adultery. And according to the law, she was to be stoned. So they take her, grab her, and haul her to Jesus. And they confront Jesus with this woman. And with that, we'll pick up the story here. It says, and they kept demanding an answer. What was he to do about this woman? And so it says here that Jesus said, okay, whoever's never sinned, you throw the first stone. And then as we know, the story goes on, little by little, they all walked off, leaving no one there but the woman and Jesus. Now here's what I want to talk about. Jesus stood up and said to the woman, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them stay here to condemn you? She said, no, Lord. And Jesus said, neither do I. Go and sin no more. Now, this was a very powerful experience for both the woman and the people around, um, and for Jesus to demonstrate something about God. The religious leaders, who no doubt were sincere, they're trying to do the right thing as they understand it, they're following the law. They bring this woman to the teacher Jesus and says, look, the law says we're to stone her. What do you say? And the interesting part is Jesus didn't argue about what the law said. He didn't argue about what she'd done. He didn't even accuse them of anything. He just said, okay, whichever one of you have never sinned, you throw the first stone. They were not expecting that. You know, often God's response is not what people are expecting. It's not what they thought was going to happen. The key in life is to realize when God's speaking, even if it contradicts what we think, we need to listen. And so here, I don't know that the religious leaders went back and rethought their understanding of the law. They just knew that they were sinners too. And they weren't going to throw that first stone. I don't know what would have happened if they had have. We don't know. Jesus never tells what would have happened. But they were all convicted, and they walked away. And they left the woman there with Jesus. And then here's the most wonderful sound you could ever hear from God. Where are your accusers? You see, they had every right to accuse her. They did accuse her. They had every right to punish her. They had every right to expect that the law would be fulfilled as it's written in Leviticus, and the woman would be stoned to death. And she did too. She wasn't an innocent bystander in all of this. She had to have known what she was doing that got her in this fix. Now it's a whole nother story why the guy isn't there, but that's saved for another time. And she looks at Jesus and she said, nobody's here, God. Nobody's here, Lord. And then Jesus says, then I won't condemn you either. And he also says, now go and sin no more. What do you think this woman did? We don't have a record of it. I'm betting she changed her life. I'm betting at that moment her whole attitude about life and the Lord's changed. You see, God doesn't come to condemn us. Truth of the matter is, for most of us, we condemn ourselves too harshly already. And he's also saying that sin is sin is sin. Jesus didn't say to the leaders, which one of you have committed adultery, throw the stone. He said, which one of you have sinned? See, in God's eyes, there's no big or little sin. There's no more sin or less sin than any other sin. There just isn't. And we, like the leaders, are all sinners. But if God wanted to condemn us, he has more than enough evidence. If God wants to judge us based on what we've done wrong, none of us stand a chance. I don't. You don't. The best person in town doesn't, nor does the worst one. But what he wants us to do is live a life that reflects him. So he says to the woman, I'm not going to condemn you. Go and sin no more. Well, of course, she couldn't do that. She's still a sinner too. But what he's really saying is go and live your life differently. The problem is you and I get hung up on levels of sin, levels of not being godly. And for some, it's they wear the wrong clothing, and that's it. Too bad, you're out of luck. You are excluded. For others, it's the language they use. For others, it's a constant belittling of people. For others, it's something else. But for all of us, the measuring rod is the same. Whatever we do and think that's against God is a sin. But this is the really good news, folks. But that's not the end of the story. God doesn't leave us to languish in our sin. He calls us to rise above it and be something different. Now look at your own life. I'll look at mine, you look at yours. I won't look at yours, you don't look at mine. We'll have a deal here. Look at your own life. How does it reflect God's purposes and God's love and grace? If it's really good, fantastic. Keep it up. If it's a little less than that, you could work on some things. If it's really unlike that, well, then just change. You can do it. With God's help, you can do anything. And this woman, I don't know, because the scriptures don't tell us, but I bet her life was different when she met Jesus. So I hope the same is true for you. Thanks for listening. God bless you. This is a wonderful day. If you have a need or a concern, let us know. We'll do anything we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. Take care. I'll talk to you again.